Week 1 of the National Football League, you have to look differently at it than the way that we looked at it for years in advance. The preseason and the fact that most teams don't play their quarterbacks in the preseason until either the very end or if at all. And the number of times that offensive line groups play with each other, sometimes when you have to shuffle in players because some players go down during the game. This is the first time a lot of players are playing together on the same field in the same snap, period. And you got rookies coming in. So the play is going to be choppy. And the number of times that you take a look at a Week 1 performance and say, how can we evaluate that? We don't know. But it is a world in which there's not much nuance. And guess what? There's a whole host of shows and conversations and social media outlets where the nuance goes out the window. We try to provide it. Facts. But there are some performances where you must give out the flowers for Week 1, and you must take a look at the conversation that we've been having for months leading up to this Week 1 and use that as perspective to talk about the first 4 quarters of a team's season and give their flowers out. If I had told you that Dak Prescott would throw for just 179 yards on 59% passing with a passer rating in the mid-80s, and that CeeDee Lamb would have 61 yards receiving, and Zeke Elliott would have just 40 yards rushing in Cleveland, where the Browns were fielding a championship-level defense with the defending Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett. If we had told you that leading up this entire all-in offseason where we're wondering if CeeDee Lamb's going to get paid and if Dak's going to get paid, and CeeDee Lamb gets paid just a week before the season, and Dak gets paid and about 6 hours before kickoff, and we had told you those numbers, you would say the Browns just put the bang thing on the Cowboys in front of the dog pound, and they're feeling great about their season. And instead, the exact opposite is true. The Dallas Cowboys went into Cleveland and absolutely destroyed and gutted the Cleveland Browns in Week 1. Ripped out their hearts and showed it to the dog pound pumping. Looked at that dog pound and treated it like it was a fire hydrant, quite frankly. Showed all the warts and all of this Cleveland Browns offense with banged up tackles and Deshaun Watson coming off of a season where it was yet another question mark for him and the Browns. And all the Cowboys did was just take that and pound it into the ground and turn it into sand and just throw it all over the place like they were ashes. That's what the Cowboys did yesterday with a Cowboys head coach who doesn't have a contract. He's seeing Dak now making $60 million a year. And how Dak performs definitely has a lot to do with what Mike McCarthy conjures up and calls up, and he called a brilliant football game. They lose Dan Quinn on the defensive side of the football and hire Mike Zimmer back into the fold. It had been a couple of years since Mike Zimmer stood on a sideline and called a single thing. And he took that defense and has, in just one game in, I understand it's just one game, that defense is absolutely, even without Deron Bland right now, absolutely one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL, and you don't want to see them. It's that simple. That's what the Dallas Cowboys did yesterday, and you got to give it up to them. And to their level of focus. Honestly, because I thought it's just Jerry Jones who can operate successfully in this world where everything's up in the air and who knows, I don't know, there's no urgency, there's no level of urgency, and even many people think there's no level of urgency for Jerry to try and win another Super Bowl. All he's got to do is just make his gajillion dollars and, sell stadium names with the Steinbrenner family, and it doesn't really matter that much to him.
Sometimes I feel that way.
And a lot of Cowboys fans do feel that way. But one game in, this team looked deep, and it looked stout, and it looked super. And you got to give that up. You got to give up. Because, the Browns, like I said, held CeeDee Lamb to 61 yards receiving.
Browns have a good defense.
No, it didn't look that way many times yesterday. And the Cowboys have a kicker that can knock it through from 60-something yards. I don't even know why McCarthy didn't let him try a 71-yarder yesterday.
I thought he was going to.
I thought he was going to, too.
That was one of my knocks, Rich, and you have said this over the years about the time management for the Cowboys has been suspect since McCarthy's been there, and it happened again yesterday. I don't know what was going on.
Dude,
but yeah, why not? Why not let him? He kicked the 66-yard one.
Because
let him kick the 71.
Coaches sometimes have to get a hold of themselves, the better part of themselves. The last thing you want to do is give. I think Denzel Ward standing underneath the goalposts an opportunity to return.
Tom Brady pointed
because
that
that's
out
the thing that can absolutely change the tenor of that game. When Cleveland was dying for something like that to happen, because it sure wasn't going to happen based on their own doing offensively or Dallas's own doing defensively. Wasn't going to happen.
That's a very good point.
And you've got to give it up to Dak, man. For Dak to get paid and find out 6 hours before the game and then perform in the manner in which he performed, which is just stay within yourself, man. Don't try and do too much.
Take what they give you.
Take what they give you, and don't try to do too much because you got to prove you're worth $60 million a year. He was awesome and had this to say about getting paid after the game.
Yeah, I mean, when I told you guys Thursday that I was focused on this game, that was the truth. I mean, I had one other conversation with my agent after meeting with you guys Thursday, and it was essentially that, yeah, they're working hard. Can't say that – I'd say that they were close at the time, the last time that I talked to them. But obviously, as I've said and alluded to since back in training camp of the spring, my confidence in both sides of this, that something would get done, understanding that they were – hammering at it, that I had confidence in it, but it really wasn't in my mind. For me, it was just about getting ready for the Browns. Whether it got done today or not wasn't going to change the way – it wasn't going to affect me, honestly. I've told you guys before, I don't play for the money. I think when you focus and you control what you can control, things like that just happen. So, yeah, I found out probably an hour honestly, probably 20 minutes before it was, publicized to everybody else.
And I don't believe Dak plays for the money, but I do believe he plays for the respect as well. And that's what the money indicates, the respect for what he does, how he goes about it, face front, the slings and arrows one gets when you're a Dallas Cowboys quarterback. That's what I would say in response to hearing what he had to say there. But way to go, man. Way to perform. Awesome. Soup to nuts. And while I'm potentially overreacting, if that's what you think, or giving out flowers, which is the way I think, there's one other thing I want to say about it. Whatever. Because that's the way you got to look at the Dallas Cowboys. Until I see it in January, that is the end of that. Got to give it up to them. When you see an opponent that has got weaknesses and you not only exploit it, you just take your thumb and you stick it in that wound, you just dig it in deeper. Got to give it up to them. Now do it in January. That's literally everything I'm going to say every single time I see what the Cowboys are doing, even if they lose a game that they should win and you're wondering, can they do it in January or whatever? Bottom line is, that's a playoff team. We're going to see them play in a win-or-go-home game in January. If not for your case, hopefully for your case, TJ, February. So you can put this team 100%, if it stays healthy, has what it takes to break the 28-year-long drought of not appearing in a championship game weekend. Now go do it. That's it. And that's where you have to leave the Dallas Cowboys. Week to week to week, man. Whatever. But
we're on to the Saints.
You move on to the Saints. And then you got the Baltimore Ravens. Then you got a Thursday night game at the Giants. Oh, my goodness gracious. And then you're visiting Pittsburgh, home for Detroit. Now let's go for that one. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.